Hello everyone, this is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto awakened the Dragon God bloodline, destroyed the Kyuubi, and changed fate with Anko Mitarashi, Hinata Hyuga, Kurenai Yuhi and Mei Terumi, Part 1. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Kami no Shinobi, Shinobi God, the professor, and the Sandaime Hokage of Konoha was sitting at his desk doing paperwork and smoking his pipe. He stops writing for a while and looks out the window. It's been 15 years since Bahamut, the dragon god, took Minato's and Kushina's son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, to the dragon realm after Minato, the Kiroi Senku, Yellow Flash, and Yondaime Hokage died, sealing the Kyuubi no Kitsune into his son. Kushina, the aka Arashi, died giving birth to Naruto. Flashback. Hiruzen was standing before the motionless body of his successor Minato Namikaze with his son in his arms. The professor then saw the now crying blonde boy and couldn't help but be saddened that the boy was now a Jinchuriki. Hiruzen looked at the boy with sadness and pity in his eyes. To think he's only entered this world for a few hours and already he's lost everything. Minato, you honorable fool, I should have been the one to perform the Shiki Fuin Reaper death seal. Now you've burdened your son to a fate worse than death, he says with an agonizing sigh. He already knew that the civilians and elders would demand his death or turn him into a weapon. He was about to pick the boy up until the blonde baby started to cry even louder when red bubbly chakra covered his body, forcing the Hokage to step back in horror. No, the fox is trying to break free, he says with fear in his eyes while the red cloak grows bigger. Naruto's mindscape. The Kyuubi no Kitsune was currently forcing its Yukai through the cage while cackling evilly. Soon I will be free of this accursed seal, and then I'll raze that pathetic village to the ground and devour every single one of those foolish nin, it would have ranted on until its chakra was sent back into the cage, making him blink in shock. What is this? Who dares stop me from gaining my Frito? The ruler of the Biju yelled out, only to stop and see a pair of glowing blue slitted eyes with white teeth snarling at him. The unknown creature's head appeared from the darkness and revealing the head of a dragon. Its head was a golden color and 6 ivory horns protruded from the crown on its head. Its eyes were slit and blue with a tint of silver around the outside of the pupil. The dragon head snarled at the startled fox and it slightly opened its maw, causing smoke to escape, and its nostrils snorted out a stream of white flames a couple of times. Kyuubi came out of its shocked expression and glared at the dragon, who revealed its entire body. The scales that covered its skin seemed to be stronger than diamonds, and they started from its neck to its tail, which seemed to have a retractable blade on the tip. Its underbelly was a silver-white color and the claws on its fingers were silver also. On its back were folded bat-like wings, but what was shocking was that the dragon was the same size, if not slightly bigger, than the Kyuubi. A sinister grin appeared on the demon fox's face. I don't know what you're doing here, dragon, but you will not deny me my vengeance and freedom, so get out of my way. The fox roared and sent a wave of Yukai at the dragon. Said creature's body was surrounded by a yellow aura, and then it released a thunderous roar at the incoming Yukai while its wings spread out. The shockwave from the roar was so powerful that the evil energy was forced back into the cave at double the force and making the Kyuubi stumble back a little in the cage. The dragon stopped roaring and then walked towards the cage, phasing through the bars of it, and entered into the fox's prison. Kyuubi got up slowly and glared at the dragon with all of the hate it had. Do you think that'll be enough to stop me? Fool, I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune, ruler of the demon world and of the other Biju. I will not be defeated by the likes of, it roared out, but the dragon breathed in and shot out a powerful stream of white fire which hit the fox full force, making the Biju hit the ground once again. The fox again cackled like a psycho. Fool, do you actually think that these flames will stop Maj? The fox cried out in pain while the white flames spread across its body. It tried to use its Yukai to remove the flames, but it only made the pain worse. The dragon watched as the fox squirmed and wailed in agony as the flames slowly spreaded around the fox in a circle. You can struggle all you want, fox, but the more you struggle, the more the flames spread and cause you more pain. It is the flames of Ryujin. Flames that are more powerful than those of Amaterasu-sama, and they can only be extinguished by the user. I am the boy's other half, and I will not let a vile creature like you taint his soul. Now demon, be consumed by the flames of Ryujin. The dragon roared as it fired more flames at the fox, who let out a cry of agony as it was consumed by the white flames. The outside. Hiruzen continued to watch as little Naruto continued to cry out as the cloak got bigger, but then it did something that shocked even him. The cloak burst into white flames and covered up Naruto. Hiruzen tried to reach into the fire and pull Naruto out, but the heat from the flames was so hot that it burned the man's hands and he had to back away while blisters appeared on his hands. Kami, if the heat alone is that strong, then how powerful are the flames? He says while two Anbu who seemed to be 15 appeared. One had gravity-defying silver hair, wearing a dog mask, and the other had shoulder-length brown hair and a wolf mask. When they appeared next to the Hokage and their eyes widened when they saw Naruto covered in white flames, the wolf-masked nin tried to rescue him, but the dog-masked nin stopped her. Kakashi, please. I must save Sensei's son. The wolf-masked nin cried out, but Inu just held onto her. No, Rin. Those flames are not normal. Just look at Sandaime-sama's hands. He said while she tried to pry his hands from her waist. I don't care. Please let me save him. She cried out until the flames died down and revealed Naruto, who was unharmed but different. The whisker marks on his face were gone and his blonde hair now had silver streaks in it, and instead of the Shikifuan on his stomach it was a red dragon coiling around the blonde's abdomen. His body was giving off a silver aura also. Hiruzen and Kakashi were so shocked that he released Rin, who ran over to Naruto and scooped the sleeping baby in her arms. She held him in one arm and removed her Anbu mask, revealing the face of a beautiful kunoichi with brown eyes and purple markings on her face. Naruto opens his now blue-silver slit eyes and looks around and sees Rin's face and reaches his small arms out to her. Rin smiles and places her finger in front of the boy and he grabs it and giggles. Hiruzen smiles at the as does Kakashi, who still wore his mask. The Sandaime was about to say something until a bright light appeared out of nowhere, shocking the group. Hiruzen and Kakashi got in front of Rin and got ready to fight whoever appears from that light. When it fades, they are shocked at who they see. It was a man who was 6 feet 5, had dark purple hair that was spiky and slicked back. He also wore a purple coat that had 3 tails and a black dragon on the back of it. He also wore all black from his shirt to his boots, and he had slit golden eyes and fangs that jutted from his mouth. He also had pointed ears. The man just stared at the ninja and points to the boy in Rin's arms. I'm here for the boy. He says while Kakashi gets ready to pull out his ninjutsu and Sarutobi removes the Hokage robes and hat and was in his war gear. You will not be taking the boy. Now leave. The old man says, but the man smirks at him and closes his eyes for a while. They then shot open, unleashing a level of Ki that was on par if not stronger than Kyuubi's. Kakashi fell on his hands and knees and was breathing hard while Hiruzen's knees were buckling from the pressure. Rin was shivering in fear, but the ki wasn't directed onto Naruto. It dies down and Kakashi lets out a breath of relief. Sarutobi was sweating like crazy. This man's Ki was incredible. If he had added a little more pressure, then he would have died. Now that you realize you're no match for me, I must take the boy with me so that he can learn how to wield the power that just awakened in him. He said, confusing the 3 while he chuckles. Allow me to explain. I am Bahamut, the dragon god and ruler of the dragon realm. Bahamut says while they look at him in shock and fear. You're a god. But why would a divine entity like you be interested in the son of the Yondaime? Sarutobi asked while Bahamut smiled. Simple. The boy is my heir. He said, and their eyes pop open. What? Kakashi and Rin scream and Hiruzen's jaw dropped. Bahamut laughs at their expressions and then snaps his fingers and they find themselves in an area where there is nothing but stars surrounding them. Now let me explain. A long time ago, I granted a man whom you all know as the Rakuto Sennin, the founder of Chakra and the ninja world the Rinnegan and Chakra. During that time, a creature known as the Jubi ravaged the lands, destroying anything that was in its path. I gave the Sennin the power to face the creature and defeat it by sealing its body in the moon and its spirit into the man's body, becoming what you ninjan call the first Jinchuriki. He realized that once he dies the Jubi will be free again, so he separates the spirit into 9 creatures you all call Biju. The Namikaze clan was once known as the Ryu clan, who were the descendants of dragons during the clan wars and the founding of the villages. Sadly, the clan's population decreased during the wars, leaving Minato Namikaze, the Kiroi Senku, as the last one alive. He explained while Sarutobi's eyes widen. His son, though, is a different case. You see, before the birth of the ninja, I had a son named Ryujin. He was the next one in line to take my throne. He was powerful. He was the only dragon aside from me to create and master the white flames. Flames that were as powerful as Amaterasu's, the goddess of the sun. The heat alone was enough to incinerate anything in its path, while the flames themselves could burn even the heavens. He pauses and clenches his fists. But before I could make him my heir, a dark dragon named Ranmyaku attacked our realm. The dark dragons are a group of fallen dragons that have given into their darkest desires and only care about destruction, mayhem, and seeing others suffer. All they care about is power. They are merciless and bloodthirsty monsters that make even the vilest demons look like saints. Ranmyaku was the strongest of them all and wanted my power to become a god. My son tried to stop him, but he was too strong, so he did the only thing he could think of. He used a technique that would destroy him and Ranmyaku's soul, but before that happened, he removed half of his soul and told me that his reincarnation will be the one with the mark of a red dragon on his body, and after that he and Ranmyaku perished. He said, and a tear fell from his face. I spent the last millennium searching and waiting for my son's reincarnate to appear, and now he has. He looks at Naruto, who was clinging onto a strand of Rin's hair, and a small smile appears on his face. Hiruzen was stumped. Naruto was not only the reincarnation of Akami's son, but he's also the next heir of the Dragon Clan. He had to make sure that no one knew this, or Konoha would be suffering the consequences. Bahamut then snaps his fingers and they appear back at the forest. Now Hiruzen Sarutobi, I must take the boy with me. I will teach him both the ninja arts and dragon arts that my people know. I also need to take Minato's body and his techniques with me, because I don't trust any of you ninjan with them or this man's body. Hiruzen wanted to speak up, but the look Bahamut told him to be silent. I may sound harsh, but that is only because I speak the truth. There are people in this village who will attempt to steal his techniques due to how powerful they are. I am a god, and I know that Minato has enemies that are both inside and outside of the village. Hiruzen nods and then speaks up. If I may ask for one request, Bahamut-sama. The dragon god nods. I only ask that you let Naruto return in 15 years to become a ninja for the village in honor of his parents. Bahamut looks at him for a few minutes and nods. Very well, but on a few conditions. You'll announce his inheritance and inform your council and village that he'll be returning in 15 years. The second one is that you give him traveling rights, because there are tasks that all need him to do, like dealing with demons, fiends, and dark dragons. Also, you will not tell anyone about him being related to a god. Do I make myself clear, Hiruzen Sarutobi? He says in a serious and threatening tone. The old man gulps and nods. Bahamut tilts his head to the left and fires a blue fire blast at a tree. When it hits, an Anbu with a blank mask falls out of it, rolling around and screaming. He then stops moving and the flames disintegrate him. Sarutobi sees the mask that had the kanji "ne" on it and growls. I'm gonna kill Danzo. Bahamut then snaps his fingers once more, and a large scroll that contains the Namikaze clan's jutsus appears in his hand. It then vanishes and he looks at the odd faces of the ninja and he just shrugs. Sometimes being a god is a good thing. May I have the boy now, Rin? He asks, looking at the girl, who nods and walks over to Bahamut. Naruto coos as Rin hands the boy over to Bahamut and he looks at the dragon god with his big blue and silver eyes. Bahamut smiles and places the boy in one arm. Remember our agreement, Hiruzen, he says, and the old man nods. The dragon god then morphs into an orb of light and disappears, taking Minato's body with him. Sarutobi looks at Kakashi and Rin and gives them a stern look. Listen you two, what just happened here is a SSS class secret. If you so much as peep a word of this to anyone, I'll have you chasing Tora the cat and doing D-rank missions until you're my age, is that clear? He says, and they pale but nod. They were about to leave until Sarutobi's eyes widen. Wait, he screamed, scaring the two Anbu. What's wrong, Hokage-sama? Rin asks while man looks down at the ground. I forgot to ask him if he knew how to beat paperwork. He said while anime tears fell down his face, getting sweat drops from the two teenagers. Flashback ends. On a dirt road that was routed to Konoha's main gate, two hooded figures were walking towards the gate. One was male and the other female. The male wore a dark blue cloak with a red dragon coiled around the front, while the female wore a red cloak with a black dragon on it. Strapped to his back were two katanas in a black duffel bag and large scroll. One had a dark red hilt with gold diamond patterns on it and the cap was a gold color. The guard was gold plated and it looked like a dragon was coiled around it. The sheath was black with gold around certain parts of it and a white dragon was coiled around it. The other one had an ocean blue hilt with black diamond patterns going down it and a silver hilt that was hexagonal with a dragon pattern on it. The female had what appeared to be a naginata strapped to her back and the blade was covered in a sheath. The staff part of the weapon was red, gold, and black. The male appeared to be 15 while the female seemed to be 17, and the male seemed to be 5 feet 8 Ichigo's height while the female was 5 feet 6. So are you excited to be coming to the village for the first time, Naruto-sama? The hooded female asks while the male sighs. How many times do I have to tell you not to call me Sama Momiji-chan? He asks in an annoyed tone while she smiles. But I have to respect you, Naruto-sama. You are the next heir of the Dragon Clan and, she says while Naruto cuts her off. So what? You know I hate formalities. I may be a demigod but I don't need to be pampered. He says while a grin grew on Momiji's face. Well, you are royalty whether you want to admit it or not, Naruto-sama. She says while the blonde sighs. You're hopeless, Momiji. I'm just glad I don't have to take the title for a long time. I'm also glad my training is over for now. I swear that old dragon nearly killed me on certain accounts. He mumbled while Momiji giggled a few times. Maybe because you keep calling him an old dragon, Naruto-kun. She replies. Well, he is one. I mean, he's like what, 1,000,000 years old? He says with a cheeky grin on his face while Momiji sighs. And you wonder why he always tries to kill you. She mumbles while they walk towards the main gate. Well, here we are, Naruto-kun. I have to go back to the Dragon Realm for a while. Bahamut-sama has me doing a few missions. She says and then leans over and kisses him on the cheek, getting a blush from the Namikaze. She winks at him and then turns into an orb of fire. Tell Yami-chan and Shinny-chan I said hey and I'll see them soon. He says while she shoots off into the sky until the orb is gone. Naruto sighs and walks towards the check-in station where two chunin by the names of Izumo and Kotetsu were sitting there with their heads down. Naruto walks up to it and sweat drops when he hears them snoring. He then raises his hand up in the air and brings it down hard, making a loud noise echo, and the two chunin shot up looking around frantically. They noticed a hooded figure standing in front of them grinning, revealing a pair of sharp canines. Sorry if I disturbed your nap, but I need to get in the village. I have an appointment with the Hokage. He says and pulls out a scroll. Izumo takes the scroll and places it into the desk and unrolls it. When he looks at it his eyes widen as does Kotetsu's while the blonde smirks. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze eh. Welcome to Konohagakure. So where have you been for the last 15 years, kid? Izumo asks with a cheeky grin on his face while Kotetsu slaps him upside the head. Baka. Show some respect to the Yondaime's son. I'm sorry about my friend Namikaze-sama. Azumo says while Naruto chuckle. It's cool, you don't have to be so formal Kotetsu-san. I may be a Namikaze but that doesn't mean I'm your better. He says and walks into the village while hoisting his bag up. The two Chunin had looks of awe and shock on their faces as he walks into the village. Well, at least he's modest and not arrogant like the Uchiha kid in Hyuga clan. Azumo says while Kotetsu nods in agreement. As he walked through, he noticed a few people giving him a few stares wondering who he was. As he continues to walk down the path he notices a huge tower that had the kanji fire on it and smirked. That must be it, he says to himself, and then a swirl of blue flames surrounds him and he vanishes, shocking everybody. Hokage Tower. Hiruzen Sarutobi was currently doing some paperwork in his office, and while he was doing that, a twister of fire surrounds him, making the man jump out of his seat and with a kunai drawn. The four Anbu in hiding appear with their ninjutsu drawn. When the flames clear, a male in a deep blue hooded cloak was revealed smiling. Sarutobi narrows his eyes at the person and speaks. Who are you and why did you break into my office? The Kami no Shinobi demands while the Anbu prepare to kill the mysterious person if he's a threat. Naruto chuckles and speaks up. Relax Hokage-sama, Bahamut Gigi did say I'd be back in 15 years. He asks while Hiruzen blinks in confusion but then his eyes widened. You wouldn't happen to be Naruto by any chance? Sarutobi asks and the blonde nods and pulls his hood back, getting a gasp from the Anbu, especially the female with long purple hair and wore an Anbu cat mask. The boy was like a teenage version of the Yondaime. He had wild spiky blonde hair that stopped to his shoulders and bangs on the sides which had silver highlights. His face was void of baby fat and his eyes were cerulean with silver around the outer part. His pupils were slit also, but in a more draconic way. He also had what appeared to be fangs jutting out of his mouth from his upper lip. He looks just like Minato. He thought before regaining his composure and then spoke up. Stand down Anbu, you may leave us. He says and Neko speaks up. Are you sure Hokage-sama? She asks, not sure if leaving her leader with the boy was alright. Yes, I'm sure Neko. You and your squad take a 30-minute break for now. He says, getting a nod from them, and they vanish. Hiruzen then performs a silencing jutsu around the office to speak with Naruto. So Naruto, tell me, what was it like living in the realm of the gods? He asks while the blonde shrugs. It was an interesting experience. Some were very humble but most of them were obnoxious or arrogant, like Loki, who's a trickster, a war god who goes by the name Ares, and a guy named Hades who's the ruler of the dead. Loki I like though because of all the pranks he taught me. He said with a cheeky grin on his face while Sarutobi groans. Your parents were pranksters also. They're the reason why I already lost half of my hair. Sarutobi said in a humorous tone while Naruto laughed. Don't worry, I'll try not to shorten your lifespan. He said while the old monkey twitches his eyebrow. All kidding aside Naruto, I'm probably guessing that your training was out of this world, huh? Hiruzen asked the blonde who smiled sheepishly. Well, to put it simply, I'm glad to have survived that sadistic dragon's training sessions. Heck, even when my folks trained me, they weren't trying to kill me though. I think Ka-san enjoyed beating me into the ground. He muttered while Sarutobi's eyes bug out from his sockets and his jaw was on the floor. Why, you met you father and mother. I thought the Shinigami devoured Minato's soul. No, she didn't. She doesn't eat the souls of the innocent. She sends them to heaven, but the corrupt she'll either devour completely or send to hell. He says while the old man's jaw drops even further. The Shinigami is female. He asks. Yep. She, Kami, Yami, Amaterasu, and Tsukuyomi are all goddesses. Not really shocking to me since females can become more dangerous than any male. I remember seeing Ka-san beat the crap out of Tu-san after he sealed the Kyuubi in me. What shocked me though was how she was able to bend his arms and legs in a 90-degree angle while stomping on his manhood 30 times and calling him a baka. He said while Sarutobi became pale at the thought. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Your father was as dense as concrete when it came to Kushina. Hopefully you didn't inherit that. He said while Naruto just grins and rubs the back of his head, but on the inside, he was sweating bullets. Nope. Not me. Unlike Dad, I'm not clueless when it comes to the opposite. He says, but could have sworn he heard thunder boom in the sky and took it as a sign that Kami was calling him a liar. So will I be living in my family's compound or what? Naruto asks while Sarutobi rubs his chin in thought. You can live in your family's estate. Everyone already knows about your inheritance and we have had a few problems with Iwa but nothing serious. He replies and Naruto sighs. Leave it to mom and dad to make an entire country their enemy. Oh well, assassins are the least of my problems. Bahamut Gigi told me he filled you in on my other activities, right? Naruto asks and Sarutobi nods. Yes he did, and Naruto, I want you to be cautious around those you associate with. Your father has enemies inside of the village too, and there are people who would love nothing more than to get their hands on your family's fortune. He says and Naruto nods. I will, don't worry. Gigi also taught me how to tell the difference between the innocent and the corrupt. So will I be going to the ninja academy or what? He asks. Sarutobi lets out a hum but then he smirks. I have a better idea, Naruto. I would like to see your progress by testing you against a few of my best Junin. How does that sound? He asks and Naruto smirks. Sure, that's cool. Naruto replies and then Sarutobi releases the seal. That was when there was a knock on the door and a female secretary walked in and was carrying a load of paperwork. Naruto's sweat drops from the sight and then turns to see Sarutobi's brow twitching and glaring at the paperwork. The secretary drops the papers on the desk and bows to the Hokage but blushes when she sees Naruto and leaves. Wow. That's a lot of paperwork, though it's nothing compared to the amount Shinny-chan gets. He says while Sarutobi sighs. Kami, I hate my job. The old man mumbles and pulls out the first one, then pulls out 2 stamps. You know there is an easier way to finish that paperwork faster. He says and the man's ears perk up when he hears that. There is. What is it? He asks in a tired voice while the blonde grins. Cage buncheons. He replies and laughs at the old man's expression while vanishing into a swirl of fire. Sarutobi sighs again and performs a hand seal and 6 clones pop up and start on the paperwork. I really need to find a successor and soon. He mutters and then pulls out an orange book from his desk, opens it to the last page he was on, and starts to giggle like a pervert. The Namikaze estate was a sight to behold. The mansion was half as big as the Hokage Tower and it was located in between the forest and the mountains. On the rooftop of the clan compound was a golden dragon that was roaring at the sky. The front yard was also beautiful and consisted of different types of flowers and plant life. The same went with the backyard, which had a zen garden as well as a lake, river, and a waterfall coming from out of the cliff. There were also 2 outdoor hot springs and 2 indoor ones. Naruto was now at the front gate, which was an ivory color. He noticed a seal on the door and then pressed his thumb on the seal and it glows blue for a while. A clicking sound was heard and the gate opens. Naruto walks inside and couldn't help but admire the sight. Everything was beautiful. It looked similar to the castle that Bahamut and the other high-ranking dragons lived in, but the difference is that it was 5 times bigger and towered over the mountains in that realm. Man, even Tozi-chan would be impressed with how healthy the plants left. Naruto thought as he walked by the garden and walked up to the red and gold double door. He twisted the knob and pushes the door open. As he enters the estate, he was amazed with the inside. There were different types of furniture in the living quarters, a large fireplace, and on the floor was a variety of different colored rugs. On the walls were a variety of paintings, and there was also one of his parents, Minato Namikaze, and his mother, Kushina Uzumaki, who was pregnant with him. Beside them was a white-haired man and the sandame smiling, as well as 2 teenagers. One had brown hair and purple marking on her face and the other had gravity-defying hair, an obsidian eye, while the left side was covered by a headband with a leaf insignia. He also wore a mask that covered half of his face. Naruto walks around the house and he sees a large kitchen with 2 refrigerators that had preservation seals on them to keep the food fresh, a bar that was stocked up with a variety of wines and sake as well as wine glasses. He also saw a dining room table that had a set of 12 chairs circling it. Blue and gold-colored curtains draped the windows and there were at least 4 chandeliers in the compound. He saw 3 indoor hot springs. One for the males, one for females, and the last one was a co-ed hot spring. After that Naruto saw a door and opened it to see that it leads downstairs. He walked down the stair to see that there were 2 dojos, an armory that had a large selection of weapons, and one that had the kanji for Namikaze vault which contained all of the jutsu the Namikaze clan ever created. After that, he walked back upstairs and headed to the second floor which had 20 rooms with full bathrooms. Most of them were guest rooms minus his parents and his own, but they each had queen-sized beds, closets filled with different sized clothes for both male and females, fully equipped bathrooms, and TVs. After that, Naruto found a door that had his name in kanji. He pushes the door open and sees a queen-sized bed with blue and silver covers with a silver dragon coiled around it along with 4 pillows. There was a flat-screen TV on the entertainment center and a DVD player. The walls and ceilings were decorated with different colored dragons. In his closet were a variety of different colored clothes and shoes as well as ninja clothes and gear. Naruto also sees pictures of his parents and dragons hanging on his wall and couldn't help but chuckle at the one where his parents are 14 and making pictures at the camera while a white-haired man was twitching his brow at them. Naruto walks over to his bed and drops his duffel bag and scroll down. He then removes his 3 swords off of his back and lays them on a sword stand and then removes his hooded cloak. He was wearing a long-sleeved open deep blue jacket which had white flames licking the sleeves and it stopped to his waist. He wore a black muscle shirt under it which had the kanji for fire on it and wore a pair of deep blue baggy pants and he wore a pair of Anbu-styled boots that had soles on them. He also wore a pair of black fingerless gloves with metal plates on them. Naruto removed his boots and placed them on the side of his bed and after that, removed his jacket, revealing his sleeveless black muscular shirt that hugged his body like a second skin and showed his lean and well-toned chest and abs. Naruto had the build of a professional swimmer and martial artist, but he was built for both speed and strength. He then gets off of the bed and opens the closet, pulling out a white tank and green camouflage shorts and a pair of gray boxers. He walks into the bathroom and removes his shirt as he closes the door. Konoha Council Chamber. Hiruzen Sarutobi was currently sitting in the council chamber with the elders and clan council. The elders were Sarutobi's teammates Kaharu, Homura, and the former commander of Route Danzo. Then there were the clan heads. They were Hiyashi Hyuga, Shikaku Nara, Inoichi Yamanaka, Shuza Akamichi, Shibi Aburame, Sum Inuzuka, and Makoto Uchiha. Hiruzen then let out a cough to get everyone's attention and he speaks up. Now that you are all here, I have an announcement to make. He said as the council members looked at the man. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, after being away from the village for 15 years, has returned to Konoha. He said and everyone else looked at him with wide eyes, especially the clan heads. What? When did he return, Sarutobi? Kaharu asks. Not too long ago, Kaharu. I had just sent him to his clan's property. He answered until Danzo spoke up. If that is true, then why haven't you sent an Anbu to summon him here, Sandaime-sama? He asks and Sarutobi just gives Danzo an annoyed look. Maybe because he just got back from traveling Danzo and I'm sure he wanted to settle down in his family's home. He stated like it was obvious and Danzo responded with grunt. Speaking of traveling Sandaime-sama, who exactly took him out of the village and where has he been? Hiyashi asks. A smirk appears on the professor's face and he answers the question. If you must know, Hiyashi, a distant relative of Minato's, came to take the boy after the Kyuubi attacked. Minato told me that he sent a message to his relative before he went to seal the fox into his son to take Naruto out of the village and let him return when he turns 15 and also to protect him from his enemies since the location he lived in was not part of the elemental nations. He stated while he was inwardly patting himself on the back for making up such a lie. Hiyashi blinks for a while but sighs. I see. he says until Sum speaks up. Hokage-sama. Even though the boy is now here in the village, do you think it is wise for him to take his clan name now, especially with all the issues we've had with Iwa trying to hunt him down? She asks, and a smirk appears on his face. Actually, Sum, I do. He says, getting wide eyes from everyone. Now I know you all have doubts if he's strong enough to defend himself from his father's enemies, but I can tell by his appearance alone he was powerful and trained well. It's possible that he's the strongest of his current age group in the academy and could possibly give the best Junin in the village a run for their money. He said, only for most of the clan and civilian council members' eyes to bulge out of their heads. What? Are you serious? Sum cried out, only for the man to nod. Dead serious, Sum. He'd probably force them to use more strength than they need to. He answers while the Inuzuka matriarch's mouth gapes. That was when Shibi spoke up. If the boy is as strong as you say he is, Hokage-sama, then perhaps he should be tested by a few of the village's best Junin so that we can judge just how strong he is. It's only logical that his skills are evaluated by the best. He states, getting a nod from Inoichi and Shikaku. Sarutobi's smirk grew bigger. Very well. Tomorrow I'll summon the boy here so that his skills can be tested by the Junin of my choosing at the cage training grounds. You are welcome to watch the rounds, but I want this kept a secret until the team selections. He stated, getting a nod from them. Sum, on the other hand, had a thought in her mind. If the boy is anything like his father, then he'll be one hell of a ninja. If anything, he'll be the alpha of his age group. I wonder if he'll be interested in courting Hana. She thought with a small smile on her face. Meanwhile, Naruto sneezed as he was drying his hair out with a towel while sitting on his bed with his white tank and green camouflaged shorts on. What the hell? Someone must be talking or thinking about me. Probably Yami-chan wanting to jump me in my sleep. He mumbles as he tosses the towel away, breathes in and out while steam rises from his hair for a while, and he shakes his head to get the rest of the water out. After that, he heads downstairs to make himself some dinner, which was some fried salmon, rice balls, a salad, and cranberry juice. After eating and cleaning the dishes, night falls and he heads back upstairs and back into his room, and jumps into the bed, resting his head on the pillow and falling asleep. Midnight. While he was sleeping, an orb of fire appeared in his room and it formed into Momiji, who was wearing a white tank top that hugged her figure and showed off her decupped and curves, and wore red shorts that stopped above her knees and showed off her legs. Her long black hair was down and stopped to her back. A smile appeared on her face as she watched Naruto snore lightly. She crawled into the bed and near Naruto, who unconsciously reached his arms out and placed his hands on her hips and pulled her close to his body and wrapped his arms around her waist and lays his head on top of her chest, making her blush a little. She doesn't say anything but falls asleep in his arms. The next morning, the sunlight shines through Naruto's window and he hears the sound of soft snoring and an odd weight on his body. He opens his eyes and sees Momiji sleeping beside him while her chest rises and falls as she breathed in and out. He blinks a few times and blushes when he gets a good view of her cleavage. He then moves closer to her and kisses her lightly on the lips, making her stir and open her eyes only to see Naruto's blue-silver eyes staring back. Good morning, Naruto-sama, she says, only for Naruto to scoff and tickle her sides, making her squirm and giggle. I mean Kun, she says, and he stops. That's better. I thought you had a mission for Oji-san. He says, only for her to grin. Just a few ogres causing trouble in a minor village. Nothing big, she said as she sat up and stretched until a pair of arms wrap around her waist. Naruto pulls her body close to his and he rests his head on her shoulder. I see. So are you gonna stay here with me? He asks. Do you want me to? She asks, and her answer was him kissing her shoulder, neck, and her cheek. Does that answer your question? He replies with a cheeky grin on his face while she blushes. He looks around and realizes that she didn't bring anything with her. So where is your stuff, Momiji? He asks while she blinks and looks around his room also. Oh, I knew I forgot something, she says and snaps her fingers, and in a puff of smoke a deep red duffel bag and a naginata that was covered with a cloth appeared. Naruto scoffs and tickles her sides, making her giggle. Stop that, she said with a pout while he grins and kisses her on the cheek. He then lets go of her and gets up while her pout becomes bigger. I wanted to snuggle some more, she mumbles while he chuckles at her. She then gets off the bed and pulls a red robe on. I'll go make breakfast for you, Naruto-kun, she says while he nods. Okay, I'll be in the shower, he says as he grabs a pair of boxers out of his closet and heads to the bathroom. After Naruto took his shower and brushing his teeth, he walks out of the bathroom and puts on the same outfit he wore the other day without his boots on. He walks downstairs and towards the kitchen and he sees Momiji making his plate, which consisted of pancakes, bacon, and scrambled eggs, and then makes hers. She walks over to a table that was near the kitchen and sets them down. Naruto walks towards the table and sits, as does Momiji. He takes a whiff at the food and grins at her. Wow, Momiji-chan, this smells great, he says. Naruto picks up a fork to start eating. Momiji smiles back and starts to eat her breakfast. After that, Naruto takes the plates and cleans the dishes. While he was doing this, Naruto heard a clicking sound from the window and sees a hawk pecking at the door. He walks over to the window and opens it up to see a small scroll hooked on the bird's leg. He takes it off and the hawk flies off. He unravels the scroll and reads it. Momiji appears behind him, wearing a red and white shirt that had a red dragon on the front that hugged her figure and a pair of blue jeans. She wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her chin on top of his head while looking at the scroll. What is it, Naruto-kun? She asks while said blonde raised an eyebrow. It appears that the Sandame wants me to meet him at the tower and test my skills against some of his Junin. He mentioned it to me yesterday, he says. Oh, she replies and removes her arms from around his neck. Well, you go on ahead and deal with the test and I'll stay here and tidy up the place, she says with a cheeky grin on her face while Naruto just blinks at her. You're starting to scare me, Momiji. You're usually not this bubbly, he replies while she giggles and walks away with her arms behind her head while swaying her hips. Naruto's eyes were now glued on her and heat started to rise on his cheeks. Enjoying the view, she asks as she stops and turns her head around with a seductive look on her face. The blush on Naruto's face grows when she poses for him. You can ogle me when you get back from your evaluation. I might even wear my maiden outfit, she says while his whole face glows red and his shunshin's up to his room to get his swords and throwing weapons while she laughed as she went to start cleaning the estate. Hokage Tower. Sarutobi was sitting in his chair reading his book, while the shadow clones were finishing up his paperwork. That was when a twister made of blue flames appeared, and when it dissipated, Naruto stood before him, with his hands in his pockets. Hey Hokage-sama, I got your message. So where is my test gonna be? He asks. Sarutobi puts his book away. Behind the tower, Naruto-kun. It's my personal training ground and only the cages can use it. So are you ready for the test? He asks and the blonde nods. Yep, but if I were you I'd tell the Junin who are evaluating my skills not take me lightly because I don't want to cripple them by accident, he says grinning while the man chuckles. I'll be sure to, Naruto-kun. The last thing I need is for some of my best to end up in the hospital, he says as he gets up and shunshins to the cage training grounds, as does Naruto, who flame shunshins to the training grounds. Cage training grounds. At the training grounds, a group of Chunin, Junin, some of the clan heads, and a few Anbu were at the training ground waiting for their leader and the last Namikaze to appear. That was when Sarutobi appeared, and then a twister of blue flames appeared beside him, making the ninjas tense up and get ready to fight whoever was in the blazing funnel. When it cleared, they saw a 15-year-old blonde who looked like a teenage version of Minato, and their eyes widened in shock, especially a masked nin who had silver gravity-defying hair. Naruto just look at them for a while and blinks. Hey Mina, everyone, he says while rubbing the back of his head. Sarutobi sweat drops at their reactions and coughed to get their attention. Now that you all are here, I have selected a few of you to test the skills of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, he said, and that was when a man with a black hair, a beard and a cigarette in his mouth, spoke up. Hokage-sama, we are wondering why you're having Junin evaluate his skills. Wouldn't it be better if he was tested in the academy with those who are his age? He asks, and Hiruzen chuckles. Yes, he should, Asuma, but his skills are beyond that of the students of the Ninja Academy, and to have him tested there would be an insult to his years of training. So I decided to select a few of you to evaluate his skills in the different fields of the shinobi arts. He answered, getting a nod from the man. The first he'll be tested in is genjutsu. Kurenai Yuahi, would you please come forward and the rest of you stand back? He asks, and they did to clear the field. Naruto appeared in the middle, and walking towards the middle was a 22-year-old woman whom in Naruto's mind was beautiful. She was 5 feet 5 and had long raven-colored hair that fell to her back, and it was a mixture of being smooth and wild at the same time. She also had ruby-red eyes, ivory-like skin, and wore red lipstick. She wore an outfit that consisted of bandage wrappings, and it started from her chest to her legs above the knees and had a red sleeve that covered her right arm, and she wore a black headband with a metal plate with a leaf insignia on it. Her very appearance made her look exotic. Kurenai Yuhi, your name means Crimson Sunset, correct? He asks, and she nods. Yes, it does. She replies while a smirk appears on Naruto's face. A beautiful name for a beautiful kunoichi. He said as his smile grew, and his response caused a small blush appear on her face, as his smile wasn't perverted or one full of lust which she got from most men. It was a genuine smile. All of the male's eyes widen in shock and surprise. He just made the Ice Queen of Konoha blush. Asuma looks at the sky and lets out a sigh of relief. Okay, the sky is definitely not falling. He replied, getting a snicker from Genma and the other males. Is that a blush on your face, Yuhi-san? Naruto asks with a cheeky grin on his face, and the blush on her face gets bigger until she shakes it off. Can we please start now, Namikaze-san? She asks while Naruto chuckles. Sure, and just call me Naruto. Formalities just don't suit me. He says and gets a nod from her, and Sarutobi speaks up. Are you both ready? He asks, and they nod as Naruto removes his hands from his pockets. Okay, begin. He says, and Kurenai gets into a stance, as does Naruto, and the Genjutsu mistress performs a few seals. Megan. Narakumi no Jutsu, Demon Illusion, Hell Viewing Technique. She says. Naruto blinks at this as an imaginary circle of leaves surround him, and then Kurenai vanishes. When the leaves fall down, Naruto feels something grab his leg and looks down to see a skeletal hand latch onto his ankle, and a skeleton pops out of the ground with a large centipede crawling from out of the socket and onto Naruto's arm. It then wraps around Naruto and constricts his body while hissing at the blonde as green saliva drips from its pincers. Naruto just looks at the illusion and smirks. He brings up his hand and does a ram seal. Kai. He says and dispels the illusion, and seeing Kurenai appear crouching with a small smile on her face. Not bad, Naruto. But let's see how this one affects you. She says and performs a few more seals. Megan. Jubaku Satsu, Demonic Illusion, Tree Binding Death. She mutters and she once again vanishes. Naruto looks around for a while and tries to move forward, only for his feet to stop in place, and sees some roots wrap around his ankles and leak him in place. A tree grows behind him, and the branches constrict his arms, legs, and torso. Naruto makes an attempt to move his arms, but the branches just added more pressure and constrict his movements. He feels a kunai pressed against his neck, and Kurenai was behind him with a smirk on her face. The other Leaf Nin were shocked that Kurenai used a B-rank genjutsu on the teenager, while Sarutobi smirked at how calm Naruto's facial appearance was. Yield. She says, and Naruto says nothing, making her frown and press the kunai against his neck. Yield now, she said, and a small smile appears on his face. Interesting genjutsu, Yuhi-san, but, he says, and his body bursts into flames and scatter across the field, shocking the red-eyed Junin. Even a genjutsu of that level will not work on me. He says as he appears in front of her and performs a few seals. Genjutsu. Kukudo no Bakiatari. Illusion Technique. Realm of the Damned. He said as they are surrounded by darkness. Kurenai suddenly finds her arms and leg bound by chains and she looks around only to see darkness. What is this? She asks until the darkness disappears and she finds herself in a realm where the sky is black and lava flows through the ground. Winged demons and skeleton crows fly through the air cawing and screeching. Naruto appears and is floating in front of her. He stretches his arm out and 6 black serpents shoot out with their long white fangs bare. The first one sank its fangs into her neck, the other 2 struck her in her arms, the next 2 sank their fangs into her legs and the last one struck her in the torso. Kurenai winces at the attack. The serpents retract back into his arm and her skin starts to peel off and sizzle. That was when a hooded cloak with a scythe in its skeletal hand appears and when it looks up at her, her eyes widen when she saw glowing eyes of a skeleton cackling at her while it raises its scythe and strikes her in the chest. Her eye twitches and wonders why she was in so much pain from an illusion. That was when a flock of demonic crows appear and start pecking and clawing at her body. Kurenai bites down on her lips so that she doesn't scream out in pain. Naruto decides to end the jutsu and does a ram seal, adding a burst of chakra into the seal. Kai, he says, and everything turns black for a moment and they found themselves back on the field with a panting Kurenai looking at him. Sorry about that. I was trying to reduce the minimum amount of power in that illusion, Yuhi-san. He says, and she has a look of awe on her face. What kind of genjutsu was that? She asks and he smirks. It's a genjutsu I created and it's called Kukudo no Bakiatari. It's based off of the actual realm of the damned where the most vile and evil souls are sent to suffer, since sending them to hell would be considered an act of mercy. In that illusion, anything can happen. You could be poisoned by demonic serpents, have your skin melted off by corrosive acid, have crows rip the flesh from your body, etc. Right now it's an A-ranked genjutsu, but if I add enough chakra or send it into the target, it can be an S-ranked illusion that can kill the target. It's normally used for torture and interrogation. It can be used in battle, but it leaves you open to be attacked. He explained as her eyes went wide and was hoping that he would teach it to her after the test. I see. Well, you pass the genjutsu part of the test. She said and bows, as does he. Thank you. He says as she walks back into the group of Junin. Naruto looks at Sarutobi and gives him a thumbs up while grinning. The man chuckles at this and speaks up. Now for the taijutsu part. Will Maida guy please come forward? He asks, and that was when a man wearing green spandex with orange leg warmers, an open flak jacket, and a shiny bowl haircut appeared with a grin on his face. But his appearance wasn't the only thing that frightened Naruto. It was the size of his eyebrows, and they were huge. Naruto's brow twitched at them. Oh Kami, there is no way in the world those eyebrows are real. Wait, did one of them just wiggle? He thought while Sarutobi had to hold in a laugh at the boy's twitching brow. That was when Guy spoke up. Greetings Namikaze-san. I am Maida Guy, the beautiful green beast of Konoha and taijutsu expert. I look forward to testing your youthfulness against my own. He says, doing the nice guy pose while his teeth shine. Naruto had to hold in a scream and keep from passing out due to how sensitive his ears were. Great. He dresses like a weirdo and he's loud. And what the hell did he mean by testing our youth? He thought. Yeah, same here Guy-san. Naruto replies. Are you both ready? Sarutobi asks and they both nod. Alright. Begin. He orders and Guy gets into a stance with his left arm behind his back and his right arm in a come on gesture. Naruto gets into a stance as well. His leg was spread apart with his left leg forward and his right leg back, as was his arms, with his left arm out with the palm open and his right arm back and closed in a fist. Guy raised an eyebrow at his stance and wondered what type it was since he's never seen it before. Naruto suddenly sprints towards the man and throws a right hook at him. Guy uses his free hand and parries it. When Naruto passes by him, he then spins his body and tries to backhand him in the head. Naruto manages to block it with his forearm and performs a kick at his torso. Guy blocks it with his palm and grabs his ankle. Guy then throws Naruto to the other side. Naruto is flying backwards in mid-air, but he manages to use his weight to flip backwards and lands on his feet while skidding back a little. Okay. He's not only fast, he's strong and his reflexes are good. Maybe I should increase the pace a little just to test him, he says as a small smile appears on his face. Guy, who was once again in his stance, raised an eyebrow at this. Naruto suddenly vanishes and appears behind Guy, whose eyes widen in surprise. He's gotten even faster. He manages to turn his body and blocks a high kick with both arms. Naruto stops and does a roundhouse kick with his other leg, and Guy jumps back as Naruto charges at him and performs a series of punches and kicks while he increased his speed and power a little and making Guy block and parry some of them. Impressive. His speed is on par with mine when I'm wearing weights. If he's this good now, then in a few years he'll be a force to be reckoned with. Maybe after this little test I can ask him to train with my students. He'll be an excellent sparring partner for Lee, he thought as he blocked a barrage of fists and palm strikes. Impressive, Naruto-san. You are indeed skilled with taijutsu, but Guy's body vanishes into a green blur, surprising Naruto at the man's speed and kicks him in the back of the head. The blonde demigod manages to flip around in mid-air and land back on his feet while rubbing the back of his head. While my speed may not be on par with the Yondaimes, I am without a doubt one of the fastest Junin in the village, he states as Naruto shake the cobwebs out of his head. Man, what a kick. Felt like I got kicked by a horse, he thought as he rubs his head in pain. Nice kick, he compliments as he looks at Guy, who regains his posture and a smirk appears on his face. Your skills in taijutsu are really impressive, Naruto-san. You pass the taijutsu session, he says with a smirk on his face. Thanks. We should spar sometime, Guy-san. That fighting style you used was really impressive, he says with a bow, and the spandex wearer bows back and shunsins back into the group. Once again, Sarutobi speaks up. Now with the ninjutsu test. Kakashi Hatake come forward, Sarutobi says as a man with gravity-defying silver hair and wearing a mask over half of his face appears with his hands in his pockets. Naruto couldn't help but grin at the man. So this is Tusen's student, the son of the Shiroi no Kiba and the man who has copied over 1,000 jutsus with the Sharingan in his left eye. Kakashi Hatake. Kakashi saw the smirk on his face and raised an eyebrow. You seem to be eager to fight me, kid, he says. But of course, who wouldn't want to fight the son of the Shiroi no Kiba? He says, and Kakashi's eye widens when he said that, but then it returns to normal. Rumor has it that you have over 1,000 jutsu in your arsenal. That's pretty amazing, he says as he removes his swords from his back and he pulls out a scroll from his pockets to seal them in. Kakashi raises an eyebrow as he places it back in his pocket. So you know how to seal items? Kakashi asks and Naruto nods. Yes, I do, and I happen to be a master in the sealing arts, he says while everyone's jaw dropped at the fact that he knew advanced sealing at his age. Kakashi's eye was the size of a dinner plate when he heard this. So I'm facing a miniature version of Sensei. Kami must hate me, he mumbled in his mind. Sarutobi snapped out of his stupor and spoke. Okay, are you both ready? He asks and they nod. Okay then, begin, he shouts out. The son of the Kiroi Senku and Shiroi no Kiba were staring each other down, waiting for either to make the first move. Naruto now had a serious expression on his face and he flexed his hands while his knuckles cracked. Kakashi's visibly eye narrowed at Naruto. He's serious. I doubt he even showed half of his skills in taijutsu to Guy. Not only that, he's a wild card and I know nothing of his skills in ninjutsu. I'll just have to stay on my toes, he thought. Not far away from them, a drop of water was about to fall off a tree branch and it did. It ascends and splashes onto the ground. Their eyes widen and Naruto pulls 2 throwing knives out of the sleeve in his hand and flung them towards Kakashi. The copy nin pulled 2 kunai out his pouch and flung them at the directions of the throwing knives. The blades clang, but when this occurred something happened. Naruto's throwing knives cut through Kakashi's kunai like a hot knife through butter and the man's eye widened in shock when that happened. He dodged them and he saw that the knives were covered in a light blue chakra. The knives hit a tree, but instead of being embedded into it, they went right through it and hit the ground. Everyone gaped at what he did, especially Asuma. Unreal. He has an affinity for wind and can do that. I thought I was the only person in the village who could do that since I'm also a wind user. He says. Kakashi was just as shocked as the other Junin were. To pull off something like that takes years of practicing. If those had hit me, then I'd be, he started to say until Naruto smirks and appears beside Kakashi, leaving an after-image of himself and sends a roundhouse kick at the man's head. Kakashi blocks it with his left arm but grunts when he feels the amount of strength from the strike. Sweet Kami, that kick was close to being as strong as Guy's. He thought, and then grabbed the leg Naruto used to kick him with. He spun his body and flung Naruto at a tree. The blonde spun his body in mid-air and planted his feet into the bark. He looked up to see a volley of shuriken coming at him. Naruto smirks and pulls his fist back. Futon. Senpuken. He then punches his fist forward and sends a gust of wind at the shuriken, sending them back at Kakashi, who ducks as the wind and shuriken fly past him. Naruto then appears above Kakashi with one leg in the air. He performs an axe kick and sends it towards Kakashi's head. The son of the White Fang plants his hand in the ground and uses it to flips away as Naruto's foot comes crashing to the ground and a small crater appears around his foot. Kakashi lands back on his feet and watches as Naruto removes his foot from the crater. Naruto grins again and charges at Kakashi, leaving a trail of after images as he heads towards the copy nin. Kakashi raises an eyebrow when he sees this, wondering why he would charge at him head first. As soon as Naruto was close enough, Kakashi delivered a right hook at Naruto's jaw, only for his fist to go through Naruto. Kakashi's eyes widen in shock when this happens, but Naruto fades away. What in the? He starts to say until he sees a fist coming towards his solar plexus and Kakashi blocks it with his arms crossed, only for Naruto to phase through him again. What is going on, oomph? Kakashi grunts as a fist impacts into his side and he skids backwards. He sees a smirking Naruto looking at him. Shocked. It's a technique from my father's vault and it's called Zanzo no Jutsu, and combined with it is Zanzoken. These techniques are from Dragon Ball Z and I don't own them, are also known as afterimage technique and afterimage fist. This technique allows me to make images of myself to confuse them and I can attack when they're distracted. But it has a flaw. It requires the person to be able to perform high-speed movements and constrain the person's body if they're not adapt to moving at said speed. He explains. Kakashi gawked at Naruto, but then I smiles. Pretty impressive, Naruto. Your form of speed is very good. Now let's see how good you are in ninjutsu. He says and performs a few hand seals. Kaden. Gukyaku no Jutsu. He says and shoots a large fireball out of his mouth and heads for Naruto. Naruto crouches down and uses his leg strength to jump high into the air as the fireball passes him and hits the ground. Naruto opens his mouth and a small blue fireball appears. He then breathes out, shooting a large blue fireball at Kakashi. Everyone's eyes widen when they see the large fireball, but what shocked them even more was that it was blue and he didn't even use any hand seals. Kakashi's eye was now the size of a dinner plate as he saw the attack heads towards him. He performs a few hand seals and yells out, Sweden. Sujinheki. He cries out and from the lake that was near a body of water heads towards the man and creates a shield around his body. When the fire makes contact, an explosion occurs and the ground shakes lightly. Naruto lands back on the ground and sees steam and a burning crater. He raised an eyebrow at this, but then he jumps backwards when a pair of hands reaches out to grab his ankles from the ground. Kakashi pops out of the ground and rushes towards the blonde. He does a right hook at Naruto's jaw and he sidesteps and Kakashi launches a kick at his chest and Naruto blocks it with both hands. Said blonde skids back a couple of feet and watches as Kakashi leaps back a little. Not bad, Naruto. To be able to sense me underground like that is really impressive. He says while the blonde grins. Thanks. Now then, why don't you stop playing around and reveal your trump card? he says, pointing to left eye while Kakashi's eye widens. I want to see just how strong Sharingan Kakashi is when he uses his eye. Naruto explains while cracking his knuckles. Kakashi looks at the boy and eye smiles. Very well, he says and places his hand over the part of his headband that covered his left eye. He lifts it, revealing a red eye with 3 tomos in it, and he had a scar going down his eye. So that is the Sharingan, huh? He asks and Kakashi nods. Yes, this is the eye given to me by my best friend a long time ago. He states. Every other Jonin's eyes widen in shock. Kakashi Hatake, the man who gained over 1,000 jutsu, revealed his trump card to a kid. Something tells me that the kid was holding back when he fought Yugai. Genma says while the man nods in agreement. Yes, he must have, since our match was a taijutsu only fight. He states. Yeah, but what shocked me was how he was able to use a fire jutsu without using hand seals, and why was it blue? A Jonin named Aoba asks. Sarutobi had a smirk on his face. Naruto wasn't kidding when he said his manipulation with fire was strong. Naruto stares at the eye for a while and chuckles. This just got interesting, he says and cracks his knuckles and neck. He then taps his right foot on the ground a few times while Kakashi wondered what he was doing. Naruto stopped doing that and suddenly he sprinted towards Kakashi but vanished a few seconds later, making everyone's eyes bulge out of their heads. Holy shit, where did he go? Asuma yelled as they looked around. Kakashi on the other hand had his Sharingan eye focused and spinning. That was when both eyes widened and he grabs an incoming fist that was going for the back of his head. He stared at Naruto, who had the same smirk on his face. While the Sharingan eye kept staring at him, still spinning. Was all Naruto said as he vanishes once again. Kakashi's Sharingan eye was seeing a series of blurs moving left and right. This he spun around and blocked an incoming kick with his elbow and grunts from the impact. Naruto leapt back and stared at the eye again. He then performs a series of hand seals, as does Kakashi, and they both stop at Tori. Kaden. Karyuenden, the both say at the same time and shoot flames that were made of dragon's head straight for each other, and when they clash, an explosion occurred. When the smoke cleared, Kakashi and Naruto were still eyeing each other. Said blonde grins and speaks up. So that is the Sharingan's special ability. It allows you to analyze, copy, and predict the target's movement, and well as copy hand seals and see how much chakra is augmented into the final seal. I'm also guessing that it can see through genjutsu, correct? Naruto asks, and Kakashi as well as everyone else gawked. That's pretty impressive, Guy says while the other Jonin look at him. He was able to comprehend the Sharingan's abilities while not revealing a lot of his own techniques. But that speed, however, it was close to matching mine when I keep my weights on. He states, and everyone's eye widen. Guy was without a doubt one of the fastest Jonin in the village, and only a few could match him in terms of speed and strength. Damn, just how fast is that kid? Genma asks. Sarutobi, however, was very impressed. Bahamut must have put him through rigorous training if he could move as fast as Guy. He thought. Back at the fight, Kakashi couldn't help but also be impressed. Yes, you are in a way correct in the abilities of the Sharingan, he states. But there is also one more thing I realized. The bloodline only belonged to the Uchiha clan, and since you are in no way, shape, or form an Uchiha, it must take a lot of energy in order to maintain it, since it's always active. The last Namikaze stated, making Kakashi eye smile. Once again, you're correct, Naruto. That's why I always leave it covered up. That way I don't end up wasting a lot of energy, he explains, and Naruto smiles. Then what do you say we finish this with one attack? I really don't want to injure you or force you to use up a lot of chakra in this spar, he says, and Kakashi nods. Sure, and in return I'll show you my original technique, he says. Kakashi then crouches down and performs 3 seals and grasps his right wrist with his left hand. That was when the sound of electricity cackling is heard, and his hand was now covered in lightning. Everyone's eyes widen in shock, wondering why Kakashi would a jutsu of that level on Naruto. Was he crazy? Naruto saw the jutsu and smirked. So that's how you want to play EH. Well then let me give you a little blast from the past. The blonde says and holds his right hand out. That was when a swirl of chakra appeared in his hand and it twisted and turned in different directions until it was in the shape of a spiraling ball. To say everyone was shocked would be an understatement. Half of them had their jaws on the ground, the others had eyes the size of dinner plates, and the rest were just stupefied. He knows one of Yondaime-sama's jutsu. Aoba stutters out. Asuma's cigarette dropped as he saw the technique. Kakashi too was shocked. The Rasengan was a very difficult jutsu to use due to the fact that it was based on pure chakra manipulation. Since you already know the name of this jutsu, what is that one you're using? Naruto asks. It's called Reikiri. It's an assassination jutsu that can cut through anything. He answers and Naruto raised an eyebrow. Sounds pretty cool. You ready? Naruto asks and the copy nin nods. The two suddenly charge at each other with said jutsu trailing behind them. When they are a few feet near each other, they launch their attacks forward. Reikiri. Rasengan. Both ninja yell and their jutsu clashed against one another. Electricity and chakra are flying in different directions while the users struggle to overpower the other. A few seconds later the attack cancel each other out and explode, casing both of them to fly backwards. Naruto however flips his body over in midair and lands back on his feet while Kakashi lands but skids back a few feet but then falls on one knee and clutching his slightly singed hand. Naruto's was the same but the burns healed instantly. Kakashi then stands up and smiles at the blonde dragon. Congratulations Naruto. You passed the ninjutsu test. He says while giving him a thumbs up. Naruto smiles and bows his head as a way of respect. Thanks. He says while Hiruzen approaches him. Excellent work Naruto. You passed all 3 tests and I hereby make you a ninja of the Hidden Leaf Village. He says and pulls out a headband that had a metal plate attached to it and had the leaf insignia in the middle. Naruto takes the headband and ties it around his head. Thanks Hokage-sama. He says and bows to the leader of the village while the man smirks. Come to my office tomorrow Naruto and I'll let you know who you'll be teamed up with. He says and looks at the other Junin. The rest of you are dismissed. He says as he shunsons away. Most of them do the same but some stayed behind: Guy, Kurenai, Asuma, and Kakashi. Kurenai was the first to approach him. How can I help you Benihime? He asks her, making the genjutsu user blush a little at the nickname while Kakashi and Asuma snicker but then look the other way when she glares at them and looks back at Naruto. That was a very interesting genjutsu you performed earlier and I was wondering. She says until he speaks up. You wish to learn it, right? He asks and she nods. Sure. I don't mind sharing a few of them. To be honest, genjutsu isn't my strong point but I know a couple of them just in case. If you want you can come by my place later on and I can show you some of other ones I know. He says and she smiles back and nods. I'd like that. You now live in the Namikaze estate, right? She asks and the blonde nods. Yes I do. Just tap one of the security seals next to the gate and either I or my associate should get it. He replies and she nods and smiles. Thank you. She says and shunsons away. Yush Naruto-san, your flames of youth were amazing. Guy yells. Naruto's brow twitches due to the loudness in his voice and looks over at Asuma and Kakashi. Is he always this energetic? He asks and they nods and he looks at Guy who was doing his nice guy pose with his teeth sparkling and sweat drops. Man, and I thought Loki was weird. He thought until Guy spoke up once again. I must say Naruto-san, your taijutsu style was very interesting. What is it by the way? He asks. It's called Ken no Ryujin. The blonde answers and Guy blinks for a while. I've never heard of that taijutsu style. He says and Naruto chuckles. That's because it's one of the ancient fighting arts that was around before the shinobi world started. Also most of the practitioners of the style died and destroyed the info on said style due to how powerful yet difficult it was to master. Right now I only know 3 of the 5 forms. He explained and Guy had a look of awe on his face. I see. I would also like to invite you to join my students in spars in your free time. He says and Naruto nods. Sure thing. He answers while a grin grew on Guy's face. Yosh. I look forward to that day. Now I must meet up with my deshis in less than 5 minutes. If I can't do that, then I'll climb the Hokage mountain with one arm tied behind my back and 2-ton boulders strapped to my ankles. He says and then takes off like a blur, making the sweat drop on Naruto's head grow bigger. He then looks back at Kakashi, who was reading an orange book while Asuma's sweat drops as well. Naruto was about to say something until Kakashi spoke up. Don't worry about Guy. You'll get used to his antics sooner or later. I have to deal with him every day. He says and Naruto groans. Great. He mumbles. Kakashi then shut his book and placed it back into his pouch. I have to say, Naruto, you look just like your father with that headband on. He says and Naruto rubs the back of his head while grinning. Thanks, I guess. So you're my god brother, right? He asks and Kakashi's eye widens and nods. Yes, and another person by the name of Rin is your god sister and my wife. He answers. Would you like to meet her? He asks and Naruto shrugs. Sure. Okay, then follow me and try to keep up. He says with an eye smile and shunshuns away. Naruto's brow twitches and grins. That guy has no idea how fast I really am. He says and shunshuns away too. Hitaki Estate. Kakashi appears in front of his family home and looks around for Naruto. Maybe I should have slowed down for him. He says, rubbing the back of his head. Is that so? A voice says and Kakashi looks around not seeing anyone, but then a pebble bops him on the forehead and looks up to see a grinning Naruto sitting on the roof. How? Was all he asks and Naruto chuckles. What are you so shocked for? I never did show you all my real speed. He answers and Kakashi's eye bulged from his head. Just who in the hell trained this kid? He ranted into his mind while Naruto leapt off the roof and landed in front of the man. In the dragon realm, Bahamut was in his human form talking to Tozi until he sneezed. Damn it. That brat is talking about me again. He growled and snorted purple flames from his nostrils while Tozi giggles. You're just upset because he always calls you an old dragon. She answers and a vein appears on his head. I may be old tree hugger, but I'm not senile. He mutters but then tilts his head to the side to dodge an apple that was aimed for his head, and Tozi also had a vein pulsing from her head. Don't call me a tree hugger, you old dragon. She said in a dark scary voice while Bahamut snorts at her. I swear being an immortal is boring. At least when Naruto was here the realm of the gods was interesting, especially when he and Loki poured a bucket of lobsters and itching powder into Ares' trousers. I never laughed so hard in my life. He says with a grin on his face while Tozi laughed out loud. Oh Kami, who could forget that? And don't forget about when he dyed all off Susanoo's battle kimonos pink. Man, oh man, was he pissed. Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu wouldn't let him hear the end of it. She says while they both laugh. Konoha Hitaki Estate. So are we going in, or are you just gonna gawk all day? Naruto asks and Kakashi gets out of his shocked state and nods. He then pulls the slide door open and removes his sandals, as does Naruto while they enter the compound. Kakashi-kun, is that you? A feminine voice asks. Hi Rin-chan, and I brought company. He replies and winks at Naruto, who blinks in confusion. From out of the corner, a woman appeared. She was 5'5" with brown hair that stopped to her upper back. She had deep brown eyes with purple markings on her face and wore a black dress that hugged her hourglass figure. She is Rin Inuzuka Hitaki. She sees her husband and smiles. Hey Kakashi-kun, how was your? She says but then freezes when she sees a teenage version of her late sensei. K Kakashi, is that? She asks while she looks at Naruto, and Kakashi nods. Yep, that's him. He answers and Naruto just blinks. Hi, he said while smiling sheepishly. That was when Rin squealed and glomped the young blonde. Oh my Kami, look at you. She says while a sweat drop appeared on Naruto's head while Kakashi snickers. Rin pulls away from him and gets a good look at Naruto. You look so handsome, Naruto-kun. Kakashi probably told who I am already, but if you want you can call me Rin-chan or Nei-chan. She says with a giddy look on her face. Naruto rubbed the back of his head nervously. Okay, Nei-chan. He answers and she hugs him once again. Kakashi, he called me Nei-chan. She squeals and Kakashi panics when he sees Naruto turn purple. C can't breathe, he wheezed out until he went poof, making Rin blink in confusion and look around only to see Naruto panting heavily and Kakashi chuckles while she blushes in embarrassment. Sorry. I was just so excited. I haven't seen you since you were only a baby. She explains and Naruto smiles back. That's okay, he says as he brushes his hair back with one hand. Oh, now where are my manners? I have some tea ready, would you like some, Naruto? She asks. Hi, he says, and she leads them to the kitchen until they hear some footsteps. Coming out of the corner were two 8-year-old kids. One was a boy and looked like a miniature version of Kakashi and the other looked like a younger version of Rin. Hey to-san, Ka-san, called the silver-haired boy. Kakashi and Rin turn around and see their children. Toshiro and Kasara. Rin smiles at her two children and pats them on the head. Hey you two. How was the academy? She asks. Boring. Kasara answers. Yeah, when can we learn some jutsu? Toshiro asks. When you both graduate. Kakashi says, I smiling, and the two pout and then look to see a blonde teenager. To-san, who's that? Toshiro asks. That Sochi is Naruto. He's the son of our sensei. The one we told you stories about. He answers and they look back at Naruto. Hey, he says, I smiling back at them, and they run up to him with stars in their eyes. You're the son of the Yondaime Hokage? Toshiro asks. Can you do his yellow flash technique? Kasara asks and Naruto rubs the back of his head and looks back at Kakashi and Rin. Kakashi was chuckling and Rin giggled at her kids' expressions. Alright, you two go get washed up for dinner and get started on your homework. Rin says. Ah, Ka-san. The gender twins whine. Listen to your Ka-san, kids, and get at it. Later on I'll show you a jutsu I know. He says. Okay. Hey Ka-san, can Aniki help us with our homework? Toshiro asks as he points to Naruto, who raises an eyebrow. Aniki, he says, looking at Kakashi, who was grinning under his mask. Welcome to the family, Naruto. He says. That was when Toshiro and Kasara each grabbed one of Naruto's hands and tried to drag him to their room. Come on Aniki, you can help us with our homework and have dinner with us afterwards. Toshiro says and Kasara nods. He as fun as that would be, I have to get home soon. He says and the two look at him and pout. Do you have to? They both ask, doing the puppy eye jutsu. Naruto just smiles and ruffles their heads. I'm afraid so. But I promise I'll come back and help you guys with your homework as soon as possible. He says and looks back at Rin. I'm sorry if I cut this short, Nei-chan, and thanks for inviting me for tea. If you want, you guys can come over to the Namikaze estate and have tea with me over there. He offers and Rin nods. I'd like that, Naruto-kun. She says. See ya later, Kakashi ni-san. Naruto says and then flame shunshuns out of the house while Toshiro and Kasara had stars in their eyes. That was so cool. Toshiro says and Kasara nods. Yeah, it's a lot cooler than To-san's version. How come you can't do that, To-san? Kasara asks and Kakashi was now in a corner with his shoulders slumped and his head down and a rain cloud hovered over his head. Oh great, now my children think I'm a lame dad just because I can't do what Naruto did. He mumbled while anime tears fell from his face. Rin however giggled at his and led her children to their room. Village Square. Naruto was now walking through the village with his hands in his pockets. When he was doing this, he noticed that the villagers were giving him shocked looks, believing that he was the reincarnation of the Yondaime. Most of the females were blushing and giggling at him. He kept walking through the village street until he saw a dango shop and his stomach growled. Might as well have some dango. Momiji will probably make a huge dinner when I get back, since she and Amaterasu said I had a bottomless pit for a stomach. He says and walks into the place. As he walked in, he found an empty seat and sat down on it. As this happened, a waitress with long black hair and blue eyes approached him as he looked at the selections on the menu. Hello sir, welcome to the dango shop. Can I start you off with an appetizer? She asks and Naruto looks up. Oh no thanks, I'm ready to order. I'll have one large plate of beef dango with sweet bean soup and a cup of jasmine tea. He answers and she nods while she writes it all down. Thank you, sir, and order should be up soon. She says as she takes the menu but leaves a folded paper in front of him and leaves. Naruto blinks at it and opens it up and sweat drops. Come around during my lunch breaks, cutie. The note says, and he looks up to see the waitress taking another order but then turns her head and winks at him. Naruto lets out a sigh and keeps wondering why he always attracts girls so easily. 10 minutes later his order came and the same waitress places it in front of him. Thank you, he says, and she nods and walks away with a small blush on her face. Naruto grabs one stick of dango and bites down into the first one and swallows it. While he was eating, two kunoichi entered the shop. One was Kurenai Yuhi. The other one was 5 feet 5 and wore what looked like a fishnet outfit that hugged her body with a mini skirt, wore shin guards on her legs with ninja sandals, and a tan trench coat. Her hair was purple and tied into a ponytail and had almond-colored eyes with a Konoha headband on her head. She was Anko Mitarashi. Anko sat in an empty seat that was next to Naruto's and Kurenai sat next to Anko. Said snake summoner saw the large plate of dango that the blonde was eating and grinned, and she slowly reached out for one. Naruto was about to grab a third one but then pauses and smirks. You know it's impolite to steal someone else's dango, he says, shocking Anko, who drew her hand back. If you wanted one you could have asked, Naruto says as he turns his head to see the face of a beautiful kunoichi. Naruto only had one thing to say when he saw her face. Beautiful yet dangerous. Anko had to hold the blush that was about to appear on her cheeks. He then pushes his plate over to her while he drinks the soup. Anko blinks and sees the dango and looks back at him. Thanks, she says and grabs one. Kurenai turns her head and sees Anko eating some dango and sees Naruto. Naruto-kun, she says, and Naruto looks over to see Kurenai. Hey, fancy meeting you here, Benihime, Naruto says with a cheeky grin on his face. Anko stops eating dango and looks at Naruto, then at a blushing Kurenai. She gulps down the dango and smirks. Nai-chan, who is he and why does he call you Crimson Princess? Anko asked with a teasing grin on her face, and she rubs her arm in embarrassment. Oh me, I'm Naruto Namikaze, he says and offers her his hand. Anko smirks and shakes it. Anko Mitarashi, nice to meet ya, she replied. Thanks. By the way, you have soft hands for a kunoichi, he teased, causing a tint of pink to appear on her face. Thanks, she stammers and slowly pulls her hand from his. Naruto then smells the air and blinks. You have an odd scent, Anko-san. It smells like dango, tea, sake, blood and snakes. He finishes and her eyes widen, as does Kurenai. How can you? She started to say until Naruto spoke up. My senses are greater than that of a regular human's. It's a bloodline I inherited, he answers. That was when a devious smirk appeared on Anko's face. So what does Benihime smell like? She asks, and Kurenai glares at her friend. Naruto takes in her scent and grins. Wow, those are some interesting scents. You smell like red wine, strawberries, perfume and scented soap, he finished. The red-eyed kunoichi face was now matching that of an apple and looks away while Anko laughs. Hey, wait a minute, aren't you the one every Junin is talking about? I heard you placed Nai-chan here in a genjutsu and made her yield, she says, and Naruto nods. Yes, but it took me a while to get out of the second one she placed me in. To be honest, genjutsu isn't my best field, even though I created a few of my own. I'm more of a frontal assault person, he explains, and Kurenai had a look of interest on her face. Really? But that genjutsu you performed during the test was very strong. It reminded me of the genjutsu abilities of the Kurama clan, she states. Yeah, but most of my genjutsu are used for either interrogation or to distract the target, and some of them can kill, he answers, and they gawk at him. Damn, I wish I was there during the test. I would have kicked your, she says, and Kurenai slaps her head, groaning. Naruto chuckles and picks up his tea. It's possible, but just because I'm a genin now doesn't mean I'm not to be taken lightly, hubby Heim. he says and sips his tea but then grimaces. Goo, it's cold, he mumbles while his finger glows and a small red flame appears over his index finger and heats up the cup. The two kunoichi's eyes widen to the size of dinner plates when he does that and steam rises from the green liquid and the flame dissipates. Naruto once again sips his tea but then stops when he sees them gawk and blinks. What? He asks. How did you do that? Anko asks and Naruto shrugs. Something I learned from my guardian when I was out of the village, he says as he sets his tea down and forms a blue fireball out of his right hand and it morphs into a flaming version of Anko who had flaming snakes circling around her. The two kunoichi had odd looks on their face and a tint of pink appeared on Anko's face. Naruto smirks and the flame disappears. Pretty cool huh? He asks. It sure was. Can I learn how to do that? She asks. Sorry but it's more of a bloodline trait so it's impossible for another person to learn it. He replies. Damn. She mumbles. Kurenai shakes her head at her friend's antics and orders another plate of dango. So Naruto, Kurenai tells me that you made Kakashi use his Sharingan during your test. Is that true? She asks and he nods. Yeah I did but I wasn't fighting him at my fullest. He answers and she raised an eyebrow at this. Really? Kakashi is one of Konoha's strongest Junin and the same goes for Guy. So tell me, if you were to fight them at their fullest, how would you compare yourself? She asked and Kurenai also wondered. Naruto thought about it for a while then smirks. If I were to do that then the only thing that would be left of them is a pile of ashes. He finishes and they just stare at him in disbelief. Naruto looks at them and rubs the back of his head. My guardian was a sadist when it came to my training. He made me train till it hurt to even breathe. Naruto says and shudders at the thought of the training Bahamut put him through when he was 6. For you to shudder like he must have been one hell of a trainer. Anko says, you have no idea. Naruto mumbles and brushes his hair back. Kurenai blinks and speaks up. Does your hair get in the way? She asks and Naruto shakes his head. No, it's just a habit I picked up when I was little. So what do you specialize in hubby Heim? Naruto asks and Anko's brow twitches. I work for the torture and interrogation department for the Anbu division and I specialize in poisons and assassination. Why are you so interested in me anyway? She asks and Naruto shrugs. Med just curious. That and you seem like an interesting person. He says and pulls out a small wad of cash and places it on top of the plate of dangos and gets up from the stool. Well I gotta go. I hope to meet you lovely ladies again especially you hubby Heim. Yeah, he says with a grin and a twister made of blue fire spins around him and he disappears along with the fire. Anko and Kurenai stare at the spot he was at and look at each other. Well he sure was interesting nay Benny Heim. Anko teases and Kurenai gives Anko a playful glare. You're one to talk hubby Heim. She says and Anko pouts. Shut up. She mumbles and Kurenai giggles and they continue to chat in the dango shop.